Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be with you. And I am really thrilled that the PsyPal clinical trial is going ahead. It's such wonderful news, and I really believe it will impact the quality of life of so many patients in such a positive way. And yeah, I really say that as somebody who has lived experience of existential anxiety as a result of a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And I subsequently experienced psilocybin, and it was incredibly healing for me. And I only wish I'd had access to it much earlier on in my cancer journey. So I thought I would just share a little bit about that journey, what it's looked like, and why I'm so passionate about psilocybin therapy. So I'm now 39 years old, and I was diagnosed with melanoma when I was 29, so 10 years ago. And at the time, I was a junior doctor. I just started working in the NHS. And I ended up having a misdiagnosis for the initial cancer. So by the time I was diagnosed, I was stage 2, but very quickly moved to stage 3 with cancer in my lymph nodes. And then a year later, it was stage 4 with cancer in my lung, adrenal gland, and the chest wall in my right upper breast as well. So I had numerous surgeries over a few years, and because it was metastatic melanoma, unfortunately, that particular cancer doesn't respond well to chemotherapy or radiotherapy. So by the time I had stage 4 disease, and every time the tumors were surgically removed, the cancer would come back, I was told that for now, there was no further treatment for me. So I was 31 years old at this point, and I was told that there was a chance there might be some clinical trials that I would be eligible for, but at the moment that wasn't the case. And that my team were hopeful that there was a new drug called immunotherapy, which might become available on the NHS, but it was all very unknown for a few months. So I really had a huge journey in those years, going from a very fit, healthy 29-year-old to, by the age of 31, having stage 4 cancer and not knowing if there was going to be any further treatment for me. I was told to do my will and to really kind of prepare for end of life. Although I still felt relatively well at that point, there was this sense that the disease would continue to progress unless I managed to get access to some treatment, which fortunately did happen. I was able to get access to immunotherapy about 3 months after being told there was no further treatment, which really was a miracle. And 4 months later, I was told I had no evidence of disease. And gratefully, 7 years later, that is still the case. I actually had a CT scan and an MRI scan this week as part of my routine surveillance at 7 years. And I am in that place where I'm actually waiting for results at the moment, but feeling positive, and really hoping that these will actually be my last ever scans, and then I'll be discharged finally. So yeah, being asked to make this video at this moment feels very poignant. Just a chance really for me to reflect on the huge journey that I've been on over the last decade, and how fortunate I am to be here, but also how passionate I am about helping other patients facing end of life or facing cancer-related distress, any illness really that potentially shortens life, to help those patients get access to psilocybin therapy. Because it wasn't long after I was told I had reached no evidence of disease that I found out about psilocybin therapy. I came across the research at Johns Hopkins University and was fascinated by this new therapy that I hadn't heard of, that had really helped a lot of patients with cancer to process and face existential anxiety. And even though I was in remission by this point, I definitely still had a huge fear of the cancer recurring. I'd had years by this point of having CT scans and being told that the cancer was back or that it progressed. So there was definitely an ongoing fear that it was going to come back. And I had a huge fear of death. I think being diagnosed with cancer at 29, really facing my mortality, had been huge for me. There was a lot of existential questions that had come up around, had my life had meaning? What had it all been about? What was it going to be like to die? Was I going to suffer? I had also felt incredibly alone during that time, despite having amazing friends and family supporting me. There was this sense that nobody else could quite understand what I was going through, and just how huge it was. I remember for years, and this was even before I'd progressed to stage 4, so probably relatively early on in my journey, I started waking up at around 4 in the morning and would suddenly be struck by how alone I felt. And there was a sense that we come into the world alone and we die alone. And it just felt incredibly lonely and scary and finite as well. That death was coming for me, that I was going to die soon, and that was it, that was the end. So there's also a lot of sadness around the life I wasn't going to get to live, the experiences I wasn't going to get to have, having a family, buying a home, all of these things. As a newly qualified junior doctor, I felt like I'd just been getting started. And then suddenly all of this was being taken away from me. And there was also guilt as well. I felt really awful for my parents having to go through this, seeing one of their children suffering, and just how much this was taking a toll on them as well. So there was a huge amount of both psychological and existential suffering during those years. And it wasn't until I found out about the research with psilocybin that I decided to go off to a legal psilocybin retreat in the Netherlands. This was in 2018. And I went with the intention of processing what happened to me, addressing my fear of death, addressing my fear of cancer recurrence, and just being open to whatever healing needed to happen. I'd never taken psychedelics before. I was completely naive, and I was really blown away by the experience that I had. There was so much in my journey, in my psychedelic journey, that has really helped me to this day. And some of it was very cathartic. There was a lot of crying in my journey, a lot of compassion, forgiveness, a real sense that I was so proud of myself for what I'd been through and how strong and resilient I'd been. But the biggest kind of takeaway and the insight that has really helped soothe me and keep me centered, and really truly has got rid of my fear of dying, was the experience that I had in the psychedelic state and during the journey, where I had full ego dissolution and got to experience myself as energy. And in that state, I was able to connect with many of the cancer patients that I had met over the years on the chemo unit, the immunotherapy unit, and got to communicate with them and got to hear from them. They were able to tell me that, yes, their physical body is no longer here. Yes, they've died, but they still exist. They're still an energetic essence, and that I only need to close my eyes and kind of tune into that whenever I want to connect with them. And they also just let me know that if the cancer comes back, if I die, of course, that will be very sad. And at the same time, that I need to just know that I will continue. I will also return to my energetic form, my true essence, and that I could just carry that with me, that it wasn't going to be finite, and that I wasn't going to be alone, and that I was supported and loved. And there was just a real sense of love throughout my psychedelic journey as well. A sense that I was so grateful for all the love and care that I'd received from friends and family and oncologists and just everybody really who'd been involved, but also that I was able to beam that love out to all of them. and just really with the most immense gratitude for everybody. So that was incredible to just really be in that amazing sense of love. So it was a really profound experience that I had. I came away from that retreat with such a shift in how I felt about death. I still didn't want the cancer to come back. I didn't want to die. Of course, I didn't want to leave my friends and family, but there was this sense that it would still be okay. If the worst thing happens, if I die soon, that it will still be okay, that my essence will continue, and that I will be able to beam love at everybody from that place. And I wasn't really going anywhere in that sense, even if my physical body was going to die. And so obviously that was my experience, but it has been so helpful. As I said, I'm now waiting for my scan results. And in the past, that would have sent me into such a spin. There's something called, scan anxiety, and it's very visceral, it's very somatic. That week or two when you're waiting for results is always so difficult. And of course, with the benefit of time and the benefit of having these scans with no evidence of disease, that has definitely contributed to my sense of calm and peace. But I would say more than anything, it was the psilocybin experience. It really was a huge shift just from that one experience. I was left with less anxiety. I was left sleeping well. I just felt much more composed and peaceful. And there was also, and this has continued, just this sense of awe and curiosity about the great mystery and death, and the sense of not knowing what happens when we die and being okay with that. Just, this is the mystery and we don't need to know. And I think for somebody who wanted certainty and really struggled with the unknown, especially at the beginning of my diagnosis, to be able to sit in the unknown now without that sense of anxiety and existential distress is amazing. So I'm hugely passionate about this area. I really do feel it will change lives, and I'm excited to follow along and see the results. It's wonderful as well that it's not just focusing on cancer patients, that it's being broadened out. And I'm actually I have been working as a clinical trial doctor and psychedelic therapy guide at the Centre for Psychedelic Research at Imperial College London for the last 2 years. So I've also been able to work on some of the psilocybin trials, supporting other groups of patients to go through this treatment. And it's just incredible. So super excited. Yeah, huge thank you to everyone who's been involved with this. It's amazing, and just wishing you well with your trial.